welcome back to Great Military Feats. In today's video, we will be diving deep into one of the most important battles in World War II, the Battle of France. Before we get into that, I'd like to ask you all to subscribe to this new channel if you enjoy this video and comment on any battles you'd like to see us cover in the future. But now let's get into the important stuff. Firstly, like always, we need to know the strategic context behind this battle. In September 1939, Germany crushes Poland and signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. This allows Adolf Hitler to prepare for an offensive in the West. France and Britain resolve to rely on defensive fortifications, such as the vaunted Maginot Line, until an economic blockade defeats Germany, as it did in World War I. They expect Germany to place its main attack through the Low Countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. This belief is reinforced by the Mechelen incident, in which German plans fall into Belgian hands. Although Belgium and the Netherlands are neutral, they secretly agree to the Dial Plan, in which French forces race forward while Allied forces fall back to a defensive line roughly along the Dial River. The actual German plan anticipates these maneuvers and places its main attack through the Ardennes forest, considered impassable for a large force. Italy is not officially at war with France, but 3 armies are deployed in the Alps, and Italy is expected to declare war at the most opportune moment. The stakes are huge for this battle and are as follows. A French victory would halt German expansion and allow France and its allies to take advantage of their superior economies. A German victory would result in the total defeat and occupation of France, leaving Britain to face Germany alone. The strength of the Allied army is 3 million men, 2,700 tanks, and 2,000 aircraft. This is outnumbered by the German army, which includes 3,300,000 men, 2,600 tanks, and 3,700 aircraft. The battlefield is relatively flat with the exception of the Alps mountains in the south, off map, and the low, marshy ground roughly north of Brussels. The densest forest cover is the Ardennes forest. The major body of water is the English Channel, which separates Britain from the other combatants. There are a number of major rivers, the most significant being the Rhine and Meuse rivers running north-south, and the Somme, Seine, and Marne rivers running east-west. Urban cities and small villages are scattered throughout the battlefield, the capital cities being London, Amsterdam, Brussels, Luxembourg, and Paris. The French-built Maginot Line, an extensive system of fortifications, extends along the entire Franco-German border. The German objective is to reach the English Channel at Calais. The Allied objective is to hold the Dial River line. The French are deployed in 3 army groups. Army Group 1 comprises the 1st, 2nd, 7th, and 9th Armies and the British Expeditionary Force. Its objective is to reinforce the retreating Dutch and Belgian armies along the Dial line. Army Group 2 comprises the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Armies, aiming to hold the Maginot Line. Army Group 3 comprises the 8th Army. Its objective is to defend against any outflanking of the Maginot Line through Switzerland. The Germans are deployed in 3 army groups. Army Group B comprises the 6th and 18th Armies. Its objective is to advance into the Low Countries, enticing French armies to rush in to meet it. Army Group A comprises the 4th, 12th, 16th Armies and Panzer Group Kleist. Its objective is to attack through the Ardennes, cutting off French armies in the north. Army Group C comprises the 1st and 7th Armies. Its objective is to tie down French armies on the Maginot Line. German bombers viciously terror bomb major cities in the Low Countries. Army Group A easily pushes the Dutch and Belgian armies back, aided by German airborne, which seize key fortresses and panic rear services. Army Group 1 rushes to the Dial Line to reinforce the retreating Belgian army, while the Dutch army retreat troops into its own prepared lines. Unrealized by the French, Army Group A makes its way through the Ardennes, with Panzer Group Kleist in the lead. German 18th Army relentlessly attacks the Dutch army, cutting it off from the French armies. French 7th Army advances into the Netherlands anyways to cover Antwerp. The rest of Army Group 1 reaches the Dial Line and consolidates. The German 6th Army probes this defensive line with little result. Meanwhile, Army Group A continues to advance. Panzer Group Kleist emerges from the Ardennes and drives towards Sedan, where only the weakest elements of the French 9th and 2nd Armies defend. German 2nd and 9th Armies headquarters are activated from the reserve. Advanced elements of the French 7th Army are shoved back by the German 18th Army to reinforce the Dutch Army's isolation. German bombers destroy an entire section of Rotterdam to make an example, forcing the Dutch to surrender. Gemelin begins shifting the French 7th Army south. The German 6th Army pins the BEF and French 1st Army, while Panzer Group Kleist breaks through the hinge of the French 2nd and 9th Armies at Sedan, opening an 80 km gap between them. Gamelin activates the French 6th Army with reserves and divisions from Army Groups 2 and 3, while the German 4th, 12th, and 16th Armies advance to guard Kleist's flanks against counterattack. Army Group B attacks the remains of Army Group 1 and succeeds in pushing them back. Panzer Group Kleist annihilates the French 9th Army, but is ordered to halt by Hitler to allow the infantry to catch up. This allows Gamelin to deploy the 6th and 10th Armies. The halt order is eventually lifted, and Panzer Group Kleist resumes its advance, brushing aside the French 7th Army and reaching the Channel. The German 4th Army follows closely behind. The 12th and 16th Armies establish a front running east to west, and the 2nd and 9th Armies approach the front lines. The French 6th Army attacks north at Laon, but is beaten back by German air attacks. The Germans seek to reduce the remnants of Army Group 1. The German 6th Army splits the BEF from the Belgian Army, forcing a Belgian surrender, while Panzer Group Kleist and the 4th Army push north, encircling the French 1st Army. The BEF launches a counterattack at Arras, but it is repelled. The French 7th and 10th Armies also launch counterattacks to cut off the German advance armies, but the attacks are weak, and the German 9th Army arrives to fill the gaps anyways. The British Royal Navy arrives on the coast to begin an evacuation of remaining troops in the north. The evacuation of Dunkirk begins. Hitler is persuaded by Luftwaffe Commander Goering to allow his aircraft to complete the BEF's destruction. British aircraft take off from the home islands to defend the evacuation armada in costly dogfights, although Goering fails to destroy the BEF. The German 4th and 18th Armies belatedly advance on Dunkirk while the encircled French 1st Army heroically fights on to tie down German forces. The French 1st Army surrenders only after the vast majority of the BEF is evacuated to Britain. French armies in the south, however, are in little position to affect fighting in the north. Both sides regroup for the battle for France itself. The German armies are deployed in 3 army groups. Army Group B comprises the 4th, 6th, 9th, and 18th Armies and Panzer Group Kleist. Its objective is to smash the French left wing. Army Group A comprises the 2nd, 12th, and 16th Armies and the new Panzer Group Guderian. Its objective is to break through the French center after Army Group B attacks. Army Group C comprises the 1st and 7th Armies. Its objective is to break the Maginot Line. 3 Italian armies, not yet at war with France, threaten the tiny French army of the Alps. The rest of the French armies are deployed in 3 army groups. Their objectives are merely to hold the Weygand Line, which runs from the Channel to the Maginot Line. Army Group 3 comprises the 7th and 10th Armies. Army Group 4 comprises the 2nd, 4th, and 6th Armies. Army Group 2 comprises the 3rd, 5th, and 8th Armies. Panzer Group Kleist opens the German offensive by attacking the French 10th Army, which offers tough resistance. It is eventually defeated, forcing the 7th Army to retreat to avoid envelopment. Panzer Group Guderian attacks shortly after, splitting the French 4th and 2nd Armies. The German infantry armies make slow but steady progress against French armies, which stage local counterattacks in an effective fighting retreat. Panzer Group Kleist is transferred east. Seeing that France has absolutely no chance of winning, Italy declares war. The German 4th Army destroys the French 10th Army, while Panzer Groups Kleist and Guderian break through French defenses on their respective fronts. The French armies must continue to retreat to avoid encirclement. Paris is declared a free city to avoid destruction. Hitler hastily occupies it. Panzer Group Guderian, followed by the 12th and 16th Armies, advances as far as the Swiss border, while Army Group C pierces the Maginot Line in 2 places. Army Group 2 is now completely surrounded. The French armies continue to conduct a fighting retreat as the German armies advance on all fronts. The Italian 1st and 4th Armies finally launch an offensive, but it quickly grinds to a halt in the frigid, rough terrain. Meanwhile, Army Group 2 surrenders. France solemnly requests an armistice, but Panzer Group Kleist advances after the armistice is signed to ensure German control of the western coast. Germany's conquest did not end with France. After flirting with the idea of invading Britain until losing the air battle in late 1940, Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941. The German offensive initially made rapid progress but stalled in winter 1941 to 1942 and was clearly defeated by 1943. In June 1944, Britain and the now Allied United States returned to France with an amphibious invasion of Normandy. In August 1944, they liberated Paris to cheering crowds. In May 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time for another epic battle of history.